have a clear sense of calling, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then don't question in the darkness what God showed you in the light. You got to keep going through.
Welcome to Navigation and Discovery with Cameron Singh. On today's podcast, we have Ryan Ingram. Ryan is the lead pastor of Awakening Church out in San Jose, California. We have an awesome discussion with Pastor Ryan on various topics. Who are you becoming? Getting clarity on your calling, taking the pressures off yourself, and much more. Ryan has a huge passion for the younger generations and college students, and I actually encountered Ryan's church when it first started during my time at San Jose State University. So you are going to enjoy this amazing podcast discussion. You're going to learn about Ryan's journey into pursuing ministry and also starting a church plant, Awakening Church, which has been in existence since 2012. So I really hope that you tune in, you be ready to take notes, and you're going to enjoy this amazing interview with Pastor Ryan Ingram. Well, Ryan, Pastor Ryan, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really appreciate your time, and I know it's bright and early where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Joy to be here. Thanks for having me, Cameron.
Yeah, thank you. So, Pastor Ryan, you're pastor of Awakening Church in San Jose, California. Where I wanted to start our discussion today is, how you found ministry, full-time ministry as your calling, and give us a little bit of insights on kind of, your youth and how you came to want to pursue ministry full-time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up, and my dad is a pastor. He's first generation Christian. He and my mom came to know Jesus, and then he was a pastor my whole life. So I actually never wanted to be a pastor growing up as a pastor's kid. Went through a season of, maybe some would say the dark night of the soul, deep doubting, and then had a profound encounter with Jesus that changed my life. And from then on, it wasn't so much of like, this is what I want to do. It was, there's nothing else that even interested me. So I love studying God's word. I love helping people. I'm a musician, so I started out in the music side of things, from drums to worship to different areas of that, and then eventually stepped into youth ministry and college ministry. And I think a lot of my journey and story is a lot of things that I never wanted to do, God led us into, and so I never wanted to plant a church, never wanted to lead a church. And here we are 11 years later, and so grateful that God knew what I needed a lot more than what I thought in the moment, because I'm so grateful we are where we're at.
Awesome. So how did you come to the conclusion to plant a church and start leading a church?
Yeah. So Awakening's 11 years old. And so it was actually, I was leading a ministry at a church in San Jose, Silicon Valley. It was a college ministry. And when we started it, they told us, don't even try. Nothing ever happens here for college students. I was like, I got a bigger God than that. And we got to watch God just grow this thing from 20, 30, 40, 100, a few hundred. And the pastor that I was serving there asked me, would you plant Awakening as a church? And so I told this to my wife, and she had the same nevers. I never want you to lead a church, never want you to plant a church. We had an experience at a church plant that was rough in our early career. And I was in agreement. So I didn't even pray about it. I just told them no, that's not for us. And then a year later, we had this deep sense of like, man, there's something shifted. Like, ministry is going better than ever, but our season has shifted, and we were just praying, God, what's next? And just kind of had these big open, like, whatever you want us to do, we're ready for it. And it just took actually steps of faith, where eventually I got to this spot where I told my boss, my pastor, hey, our season here is done. I don't really know what's next. I just know I'm called to lead it. And Steve Clifford, he said, well, why don't you plan Awakening as a church? Circling back to that conversation we had a year ago. And we're finally open to that. And I think so much of life is one of those things where we want the full picture. We want to know step 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And often God only shows us step 1 or 2. And as we take that first step, then he, opens up step 2, 3, 4 for us to really know what's next. And step 1 for us was just me going public of like, hey, season's changed. We don't really know what it is. And then we went to an assessment to go, is this a good fit? And they confirmed that. And so by that time we were going, okay, we're ready. We feel called to plant this ministry that was a college ministry as a church to reach the next generation.
And what would you mentioned you have a passion for youth and you were trying to reach to the college students. Where did that passion come from to reach out to the youth and college students?
Yeah, a few different places. I think both for my wife and I, my wife's name's Jenny, and we've been married 20 years now. It's crazy. Our oldest graduated from high school. We're sending her off to college. And both for her and I, we had significant transformation and encounters with Jesus in our college years that shaped us fundamentally. And so for me, it was going into college that led into going, you know what, I'm going to actually pursue studying theology instead of anything else. And then my wife really had an encounter through real difficulty. One of our dear friends passed away when we were in college, and it's one of those crisis moments of where you begin to evaluate the big questions in life. And that was the turning point in her life where she really came fully to Jesus. And so ever since then, we've realized, man, those college years, those young adult years, they're incredibly important. You make some of life's biggest decisions and set the direction of your life, and incredibly formative. And so just have a passion. I often think a lot of people overlook the next generation. They can look down on the next generation. Oh, this generation does this or they do that. They're always, categorizing them. And it's like, man, there's so much in this next generation. There's so much potential and there's so much gift. And I want to see how we can draw that out and develop it and be a cheerleader and a coach along the way.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. My college years was the first time living out of the house, and that was truly, the title of this podcast is Navigation Discovery, but those college years are truly a journey of like navigating, discovering like who you truly are. I mean, for me, I remember entering college and I'm like, I'm done with faith. I'm done with church.
Sure.
I'm done with that. And it wasn't until encounters with some awesome people, back then it was called Campus Crusade for Christ, is where I returned to faith and returned to God. Even during the time when, I felt God wasn't there. He was always there.
Right.
So through kind of your experience encountering with college students and young people and youth, what are you seeing in the youth today and the college students today? What trends are you seeing? What challenges are they having? What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some really great things going on and some really challenging things. Like to your point, I mean, this generation is known as I think the most anxious generation ever. And when you think through the life experience that just a typical 18 to 20-year-old has walked through, basically being born just after 9/11, then they have the 2008 crash, to walk through a pandemic, and and then to have all the technological shifts that have happened in their lifespan. So they're, digital natives, so they have, nonstop, never experienced the world without an iPhone, which is kind of crazy, because I, can remember having to, use a phone with a cord for growing up years. And so, but then the amount of social pressure that is put upon you when you're on all these social media platforms, and then the levels of anxiety and depression. So there's that side of it that I think just one from us needs deep empathy to see and understand, and to come alongside and support and to help. And also, I think part of that is we live in such an information rich world, but we actually don't have a whole lot of wisdom. And so you can't Google wisdom. So how do we then help this generation lean into the wisdom of the past? But I think on the flip side, some of the most encouraging things, this generation has such a deep passion for justice, for really making a difference with their life, for not just going through the motions, but like, how do they leverage their life for purpose and meaning? And so I get really excited about that, as they're asking, deep questions about life, and how they can be, not just a bystander, but a participant in making this world and this society a better place.
Yeah, I truly think society has definitely shifted, especially what we've experienced over the last couple of years. I think the anxieties of the world and I've seen this with people that have not been open to faith, is now they're starting to explore what faith and spirituality looks like in their life. And even I see this with adults too. I mean, a great mentor of mine never was open to faith at all until now.
Sure.
Um,
Oh,
but what do you see? Because I'm sure you're seeing a lot of young people explore faith and spirituality, and for us, it's Christianity. But when people are exploring that from what you've seen in the church, what's the why behind exploring what it's all about?
well, I think the why goes back to, though we have new generations, we still have the same hunger, um, and same core desires. And so it, I agree, post COVID, or whatever world we're in now, I don't know what we call it now, but all that we've navigated through, the desire for meaning, beauty, purpose, transcendence, I think, is a huge reality of longing for, understanding, like, okay, there's got to be something bigger than me, and there's got to be a purpose behind all this. Presence as well, I think, is just another reality in the way that our world is rapidly changing. We're more connected, but more isolated than we've ever been before. And so how do we actually connect and have presence on a deep personal level, both with one another and with God? And so those questions are foundational, that we've been asking for millennia, and it's still the same. It just expresses itself in different ways through different generations.
Yeah, for those listening out there, that there's people from different faiths, different backgrounds, different circumstances. What advice would you have for those listening that are starting to explore faith, or trying to find their purpose, what they want to do, what they want to pursue, what their meaning is in life?
Yeah, one, be deeply curious. Be deeply curious, and ask lots of questions. Yeah. I think so often we make broad assumptions, and so we write off lots of different areas. So be deeply curious. You're coming from different faiths, different spiritual backgrounds. Be deeply curious about all of it. Examine it well, and I think just having that I think we're losing that curiosity in our age. And so I think that's probably the first and fundamental thing I'd say, is uh, I think we are growing in the age of pessimism. And so how do we then reignite that curiosity and that wonder, and thinking about that, just going out in nature and being in awe of,
Mhm.
and asking questions of like, okay, well, it seems like there must be some intent or design, and just the fact that there's beauty in the world, that I acknowledge this beauty, or the reality that there is this tangible idea of goodness. Like, how do I how do I reconcile that with the hard and the evil in this world, and where is the best solution and answer to those deep questions? And so I think it's just a deep curiosity.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit. I want to go into kind of your pastoral experience, mindset of a pastor a little bit, to touch on kind of your 11 years of experience at Awakening. Early on, what were some of the challenges that you had as a church?
Oh man, lots of them, lots of them. I think when you start with a young generation, you don't know if how are you going to even financially make it.
Mhm.
And so I think that's the other side of some things that I've just watched, is this generation has far more in them. And I'm not just talking financial, I'm just talking the way they serve, the way they love, the way they care, that
Yeah.
just needs to be called out of them. And so I think in those early days, especially because we didn't really know what we're doing, there's a lot of trust. There was a lot of taking steps and then going like, oh, well, that's not quite the right direction. And I think that's an important thing in all of life. Is I think so often we want to make the perfect decision that we make no decision, and we wait too long. And so just make the best decision, and then adjust. You can make adjustments. It doesn't have to be final, and it often isn't fatal. And so making some of those adjustments along the way, and I think, just back to more your last questions connected to this question, I just think Jesus is what I just keep finding is in every generation. um, Jesus, man, who he is just so attractive, and so appealing. And we don't have to, you know put lights and
Mhm.
smoke and this show. And that's what this generation doesn't. They want authentic. They want the real. They want an encounter. It's like, man, just give them Jesus, because he's amazing. and
Yeah.
I, and I think that's one of the things that I just continue to learn. Like, you don't have to market it. You don't have to try to get some slick scheme, or it's just Jesus, and he's amazing. Um, and every generation, gets to see him, and he's attractive to every single generation.
Mhm. That's awesome. What would you say, what keeps you going as a pastor? What keeps you pushing through, pushing forward? Because, I have a few pastor friends and kind of hear their stories, big churches, small churches, church plant. I know it's not easy, but what keeps you moving forward?
Yeah, I think one of it, and we touched on it at the very beginning, is the clarity of calling. And
Mm.
I just say getting really clear on what you're called to do. And so, back to when we began Awakening, we got really clear, like, this wasn't just our idea. This was confirmed by multiple other people, and this was like God's calling on our life. This is what we're supposed to do, and we're both in it together. And so if you have a partner, if you have a mate, like, making sure you both are in it together. So that sense of calling, there's Dr. Howard Hendricks says, don't question in the darkness what God has clearly shown you in the light. I like how Corey Ten Boom said it. She's like, the moment a train goes into a tunnel, it's not the time to get off the train.
Hmm.
It's the time to trust the conductor. He knows what he's doing. And so often when things get hard, when things get dark, it's when we're ready to bail.
Yeah.
And that's the exact wrong time. And so, like, when you have a clear sense of calling, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, then don't question in the darkness what God showed you in the light. You got to keep going through. And over, I think 2020, many people, most of us were reevaluating life, reevaluating direction, and I mean, pastors are no different. It was very difficult and had many challenges, and it was one of those re-up with God. Okay, God, are we still called?
Hmm.
Been doing this a decade. Is this still what you have for us? And through a process that was really clear and affirmed. And I'm so grateful, because then there were some really difficult, challenging seasons over the last several years post that moment
Yeah.
forward. That is that clear calling. Okay, you got me in this. You're going to see me through this. And so let's go. No matter how hard it gets, no matter what we face, I'm so clear on this is what I'm supposed to be doing, that I can get through it. And often people give up before they get to the other side to see the good
Yeah.
on it,
That's true. Hmm.
And so, like, get really clear on your calling is probably my number one um, area as far as grittiness or perseverance through it all.
Hmm. And I think you touched on something good with calling. I think as youth, we're pressured to find our calling and find our what we want to major in and stuff like that very quickly. And I knew when I was at San Jose State, half the people I knew didn't know what they want to do. There's so
Yeah,
much pressure out there. And even I feel like adults struggle with that too. What's my purpose? What's my calling? Even people of older generation, they're still trying to figure that out. But for those listening out there, what advice would you have for those that are really struggling? Is this the direction I'm called to, or am I supposed to go in another direction?
yeah, I think that's so great and so true, Cameron. Absolutely. I do. I think, one, that pressure is real,
Yeah.
and just to acknowledge it and to take it off. And I talk to a lot of college students, and uh, the question that parents always have are, what are you going to do?
Hmm.
What are you going to do? And I think the bigger question, first question, is a better question, is really, who are you going to be? Like, life is way more important about who you're becoming than what you're doing, um, because that's where who you take everywhere. And honestly, Dallas Willard talks about who you're becoming is ultimately what you take into eternity. You take nothing else with you. And so I think, especially in the 20s, I call the 20s the discovery stage. You're just discovering and learning. Take the pressure off.
Hmm.
And because we not only have this pressure of, like, you have to have it all figured out, but then you have to be successful. You have to, like, go on, and if you haven't by 28 or 29 climbed the ladder, done these sort of things, then you're a failure. Like, no, you're not.
Hmm.
Take the pressure off. Discover, like, you're there's so many big life decisions, like we said, in college, and then post college, and then and on. And then I think the 30s is really the development stage. um, Robert Clinton wrote this book, The Making of the Leader, and he kind of tracked the leader's progression, and from the early life stage to formation and character development. Then you had kind of your ministry or work development, and then you began to see the convergence of both of those. And I think it's so helpful to know it's a process. It's not just a moment, and to just be in that process of growth. And so take some of the pressure off first. Identify where you're at in the process. So if you're in your 20s, go, man, I'm in the discovery stage. I'm learning a lot, and I'm going to just, like I said earlier, be curious, ask lots of questions. And then I think getting really wise counsel and people around you who know you well. not just people who tell you the things that you want to hear. Maybe not. Your mom loves you, and my mom says you're the most amazing. You're like, well, no, I'm not the most amazing, but I love it that she's my mom and she's going to think that way. But who are people that are going to, and we need those people in our lives for sure. But who are the people that are going to, like wise mentors, sages? Yeah, one of the things that I think about is building a board of mentors. So that you have kind of like, okay, this person for business, you have multiple mentors. I know, I have this person for family or life. I have this couple for our marriage. We have, and so not that you have some board but you just kind of have this mindset of like, I need specific people in areas to help me grow and to develop in that. And then also, I think, recognizing that what's true of your direction and calling in your 20s or in your 30s may be different in your 40s and 50s. And that's okay. I think because of the way we work in the West, that you have everything mapped out until you're basically 22 or 25, whenever you finish school, maybe you got your master's to go on to get your doctorate. But then there's no roadmap after that. And what we really want is just a roadmap. And I think what we need is a compass of like, here's the true north. That's what the calling helps us. Here's my true north. Here's the direction, and figuring out. And then you're beginning to navigate the circumstances and the different opportunities that are along the way, and using that compass to help you evaluate, is this the right direction or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how would you say faith would be a factor in trying to find what calling and purpose is all about?
Well, I think it's immensely important. Obviously, I'm coming from a faith and obviously a Christian background, but even just the idea of meaning and purpose is there's got to be some design and intent behind all that we see for there even to be meaning, purpose, love, or beauty. So faith is immensely important. It's central to it. If there is no design intent behind this is meaningless, purposeless, and there is no calling. So it's rough.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say faith is mean, and then I think the other side of it for us, for me, is getting to have the Spirit of God living inside and dwelling and helping and guiding. The scripture says that the same power that raised Christ from the dead actually lives and dwells. And so I have access to not just my wisdom, but to God's wisdom, access to not just my energy, my power, but to God's power, to love people, to care for people, to do the things that he's called me to do, to help guide. He's called the counselor and the comforter. So discerning those things in the context of not only faith, but a faith community of other people.
So Ryan, yeah, I think something that stands out to me is what you said, is focusing on who do you want to be rather than what do you want to be or do. Because I remember early on in my early 20s and late teens, the focus was, what do I want to be? And that's all the focus is. And, even in general conversations, you go to meet random people, the first thing is, what do you do? It's not about who you are, or, how are you feeling today? It's what do you do? And that really defines how this conversation or interaction is going to go. So thank you for that. I think you provided a lot of great insights, which I wish I knew when I was young in my 20s at San Jose State. So I hope those listening really got some great insights from you.
No, well, I hope whatever the little I have, I hope it's helpful. I hope it is encouraging and helpful.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts or comments?
Yeah, just in light of our conversation that we've had, I think for those who are listening that are maybe in a place that are discouraged with life or discouraged with where they're at. And they're just really kind of have that sense of like maybe life has passed them by. One of my favorite quotes is it says, though you cannot go back and have a brand new start, you can start now and have a brand new end. And I just think so often we think that we're in such a hurry to accomplish and to get stuff done, and then when maybe life hits us or things don't go the way we envisioned, then we feel like, man, life has just passed us by. And some of the, if you look back in history, some of the great people in all of history have been used later in life. And so, yeah, if you're old, you're not obsolete.
Yeah.
You know? And so, so I just want to encourage you, tomorrow's over. Today's a new day. Start today and focus on, okay, who am I becoming?
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Pastor Ryan, how can people connect with Awakening Church for those that are local to the area, and also for those listening from afar? How can they connect with your church?
Yeah, awakeningchurch.com, and then on the social, Awakening SV is a great way to connect with Awakening Church and what we're doing. And then you can also find us on YouTube at Awakening SV.
Yep. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for your time and providing your insights, and really appreciate your church. I do tune in to your YouTube channel every now and then, and always have really enjoyed your preaching from even my time at San Jose State. So really appreciate that.
No, thanks so much. And thanks for having me. It's a joy to get to have this conversation and get to be with you again, Cameron.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this podcast conversation that I had with Pastor Ryan Ingram. Hopefully that you were able to gather some nuggets and apply it into your life wherever you are in your journey of navigation and discovery. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you would like to connect with Awakening Church and listen to their church and get plugged into their church, whether if you're local to the San Jose, Silicon Valley area, or want to check out some of their sermons from afar, the link to their church is in the podcast description. So you can go find out more about Awakening Church, awesome sermons that Pastor Ryan and his team have, and really would be great if you could check out their church, whether you live locally or if you ever visit that area. And also, you can connect with me on social media. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast and tuning in and taking the time out of your busy days. On whichever platform that you're listening on, feel free to subscribe. And also, go to my website, CameronSing.com. That link is in the podcast description as well. And also, if you haven't yet purchased my book, Navigation and Discovery, you can go ahead to my website and get your copy today in any format that you would like. Thank you again for your support. Thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next episode.